On this episode of Rolled Up, I catch up with 4th degree black belt Nic Gregoriades, where we talk about Roger Gracie, how rolling can make or break friendships, the art of teaching jiu-jitsu, psychedelics, and more. I'm an avid traveler, co-founder of BudoVideos.com, jiu-jitsu black belt, and lifelong student of the martial arts, who strives to know more about the competitors and instructors who are revolutionizing the jiu-jitsu lifestyle. Join me in my journey as I travel, train, learn, and get rolled up. Ever since Nic first came on my show 9 years ago, we've been great friends. Nic's lived all over the world, but now calls Los Angeles his home at the world headquarters for the Subconscious Jiu-Jitsu Association. I've always been impressed with Nic's openness, honesty, and incredible jiu-jitsu teaching ability. So let's get this started with a simple question. So Nic, how has jiu-jitsu changed your life?
It took me on this amazing adventure. Right? That includes meeting people like yourself, meeting people like Brent, who I run Subconscious with, traveling the world, winning, losing, testing my limits. It's done so much for me. I think the biggest thing though is I've just been blessed to meet these wonderful friends and people who now, such as yourself, literally like my family and my brothers. And that has just been, I wouldn't change it for anything.
How does fighting with people create friendships?
So I think you can really get to know someone very quickly when you grapple with them, right? Like you can know the kind of person they are. I remember the only real douchebag student I've ever had in my life. I remember he wouldn't spar with anyone. He wouldn't. We would only take private lessons. And I always thought that was kind of weird. And then I realized lately it's because he was such a twisted and narcissistic and weak human. He didn't want his ego exposed by sparring, So anyone who you fight and roll with, on some level, they're open to testing themselves, they're open to getting better. And when you and them enter that crucible of sparring and training, it creates a bond, a certain type of closeness that I think few other things do. I've heard it said that the closest bond that can be formed in humanity is that which men who go through combat together in wars. The love that they form is even stronger than a love between a father and a son or a husband and wife. I don't know if that's true, but I always thought that was interesting. And I guess what we do here on the mats is kind of like a very diluted example of that.
But I feel like there's a way to create friendships and good feelings in a roll. And there's also a way to create enemies and exposing people's weaknesses and punishing them. How do you roll in a friendly manner? How would you advise people to do that?
Man, I think it's just the golden rule, right? Or karma, right? Whatever you put out is going to come back to you. So Roger once said, someone asked him at a seminar or something what do you do if the guy is on your back and he chokes your face? And he's like, that's okay, but then I'm going to choke his face, right? And I thought, yeah, if you're a douchebag and you're just vicious and ripping stuff on and everything, sooner or later there's going to be a bigger dog and he's going to do that to you, right? And it's going to come back and then the circle will be complete, right? And I mean, I'm sure have seen in your own life, karma is a real thing, right? What you put out is what you get back.
You mentioned Roger Gracie. Of course, you got your black belt from him, the very first Roger Gracie black belt. Roger is, of course, regarded as one of the best, if not the best grappler of all time. How much of his jiu-jitsu do you think you possess?
Man, I get really frustrated sometimes because, I'll be teaching and people will say, oh, you're Roger's black belt, show us a mount choke. And I'm like, look, I can show you the technical details of that choke pretty similar to the way he does it because he's shown me the details. But people forget, man, the attributes play such a role. We all have different games because we all have different body types and different abilities, right? So for example, Roger has these massive hands. If I put my hand against his, it's like this, right? 2 inches extra, right? And he's also got very big and also flexible hips. So when he puts you in the mount, for example, it's he's perfectly primed to do that choke because he can keep his hips really wide and his base really low. And then he's got these monstrous hands that can just like crush over most other hands, right? So as much of my game as is possible to come from him comes from him. But there are certain things, the way he does it, because of his bone structure and his attributes, I just can't do it. So short answer, I would say about, at this point, probably about 30%, because, you know, I've been living away from England for a long time. I only see Roger once a year. And the truth is, every time I see him in that yearly trip, like, I get this influx of really good stuff. But at the end of the day, my game is an amalgamation of my own stuff I learned from Brent, stuff I learned from you, stuff from Roger. It's just it's a melting pot of different things. Okay, guys, so today we're going to look at the Ezekiel choke from the mount position. But before we even look at the technical details of how to do it, I want to share a concept with you guys, which is the understanding that any choke you do in the gi, any choke that requires a grip, whether it's of the cuff or the collar, how your hand and wrist are positioned will determine how effective that choke is. So the way I remember it in my mind is, if you could throw a punch with the choking hand and not hurt your hand, then you know your grip is good, right? So for example, if I'm here and I've got a grip on Jake, if I removed the cloth and kept my hand in the same position, I could punch someone like that, right? If I was gripping like this and I removed the cloth, could I punch someone like that? No, you'll hurt yourself. And this is especially important for an Ezekiel, right? You want your hand in a punching position, because I'm sure many of you guys have been in a situation where you're trying Ezekiel and your wrist bending back and it's actually hurting you more than it's hurting him, right? So a little tip to help you with that is, I learned this from a really good black belt, is when you're moving on the ground, when you get up, make a fist and get up like that, right? Don't get up like this, here, right? Get up on your knuckles. And that really trains that alignment and really strengthens that wrist and hand, okay? Just a little detail, right? So when you'll see me, if I get up like this, always knuckles first. That made a difference to my chokes. So let's put that into action with our Ezekiel choke. So we get into mount, right? Now, there's 3 different kinds of mount generally. There's low mount, mid mount, and high mount. Each one of them has a preferred finish, or a finish that works better there. The low mount, which is this one here, the best finish from here is the Ezekiel. So that's what we're going to look at, Ezekiel from the low mount. So the very first thing is, once you low mount, you must make him really feel the pain, right? Like, low mount should be a very uncomfortable position. So Jake, feel the difference between this and this, right? I want my sharp bones of my hips digging into his abdomen. It must be very uncomfortable for him. It's not a relaxing position. And one of the first things that will happen, the most common response when you get here and you drive your hips into him, is he panics and he starts trying to push on your hips. That's what we're looking for, right? So when he takes his hands away from his neck and starts to push on your hips, a little alarm goes off in your head. Okay, it's Ezekiel time. So I'm fighting with Jake. I pass and I drop my hips down to look him up. My hands are wide, so I've got a good base. He starts trying to push on my hips. One arm comes under, right? Now, your hand will always fit under the back of his neck. Doesn't matter how much he's trying to put it flat on the ground. If you put your hand flat and dig your fingers, it will always go under, because of the back of his neck is a curve. And then what we're going to do, there's quite a few details. Once the arm goes under his head, I'm looking to get my fingers, all 4 fingers, inside the cuff. So of the arm that went under the head, those fingers are going to go inside the opposite cuff, right? And what I'm looking for then is, I want all my knuckles to be hidden inside my sleeve, right? I don't want that. There you can see the last set of knuckles are not in the sleeve, and even the second set is not in the sleeve. Whereas that, all of them are in. And there's a very cool little trick, because most of the time, especially if it's tight, it's very hard to get all of your knuckles in there. But what you can do is engage the grip and pull this arm, the arm of the sleeve that you're holding. So I take my grip and I pull. And then that makes a lot of space and allows me to get my hand all the way in. And notice how my wrist and my hand are. Like punching position, right? Perfect punching position. So that's the first thing, is we want to get that nice deep grip in the punching position. And you guys might want to come in a little bit closer so you can see, there's micro details here. So come a little bit closer, make sure you stay out of the line of the camera. You probably want to get on this side, some of you as well. Or not. Okay, so let's spin you a little bit, Jake. So I mount to Jake, my hips are heavy, I'm in low mount. And ideally here, I'm crossing my ankles and lifting them up and driving my hips into him. One hand slides under his head. I grab my cuff and I pull this elbow in so that my arm can go deep. So then, the next thing I want to do is I want to get this hand in across Jake's neck. So we'll start with that. It's very simple. The easiest way, if he doesn't defend, I just jam this hand in, and I want this bone here, the ulna, I think it's called the ulna process. I want that on his Adam's apple. Ezekiel is a choke, so it's an attack on the windpipe, right? So for the purpose of the drill, guys, I'm not in full low mount, my hips are up, but just so you can see. So here, yank back, hand goes in deep. I slide this guy across. If he's tucking his head to protect, I can use my own head to make the space. Then my hand goes across. Once my hand's across, there's one more little detail, which is I shuffle my arms across. So I'm here, I do this. It's almost like you're rocking a baby. Apparently that's something that you do when you're a parent. I don't know. Jake, do you know anything about that?
No, I don't.
No? Okay. So in here, who's a dad? Yeah? Is that like a, yeah? You do that. I can see you doing that, Mike. So in, yank, knuckles in, and then once your arm is across, this, and that takes the space away. So 1, 2, across, take that space away. And then to finish the Ezekiel, you straighten your arms, you go into extension, and he'll tap real quick. So let's look at that basic way to do it, and then we'll look at how to counter some of his common defenses. Yes, Mike?
Can you do the straightening without his head in there?
Yes. Straightening straight down. Yeah. Without letting this guy bend, remember? So it's this.
You have world-class jiu-jitsu. But one thing I love is training with people who train with the best, because sometimes the competitors can't explain what they're doing the best because they just grew up with these attributes or incredible cardio or whatever, and they're probably training from a young age. But some of us had to fight for our knowledge, and I find that you're able to explain things in such a way that's many times better than some of the world-class competitors.
Thanks, man.
Do you feel like your explanation of the techniques is your greatest skill?
Yeah, you know, I wouldn't say I'm a natural athlete, man. Like everything I have athletically, I had to earn. I had to like read and study and lift weights and practice, sports science principles. I always joke with my partner in Subconscious, Brent, like Brent was the high school quarterback, right? And while he was, on the field in high school, I was playing video games, right? So yeah, I had to figure out ways, because I had to learn how to understand it from a different angle for myself. I feel I'm lucky enough to now be able to explain it to others, using that wisdom I gained on that journey.
And when you were looking for a team to join after you left Rogers, you were with a previous team before then, but why did you come to Subconscious, and what does Subconscious Jiu-Jitsu mean? I
came to Subconscious, I joked that this place literally saved my life. When I got here 2.5 years ago, I'd already known Brent. I taught a seminar here a couple of times before. Brent and I were good friends. And this was at the start of COVID. I'd just gotten divorced. I was in the darkest place in my life ever. Like nothing even comes close to that. And I was living in Arizona at the time, and I decided to leave Arizona, and I came to LA, and I didn't know where I was going to stay. I didn't know what I was going to do. And like Brent said, yeah, just stay with me in the gym, and that gym, literally like being around the guys and being on the mats and exercising and sweating and joking with everyone and like just being in jiu-jitsu, it saved my life. Really, like it helped me in so many ways. And so then a little bit later, Brent asked me if I'd like to be involved, right? Because I'd been running another association called Jiu-Jitsu Brotherhood, and that coincidentally, around the same time of my divorce, my relationship with the gentleman who ran that with me kind of broke down as well. And so, I didn't just want to like give up everything I'd built in jiu-jitsu. So Brent said, okay, well, I want to create a subconscious association, and why don't you do that with me? So I was like, it was one of those serendipitous moments. And in my life now, I've learned that like, for me in particular, my life flows best when I receive invitations. When I try to force my will upon the world or impose things upon the world, it either has average results or it ends in a disaster. But when I receive an invitation and I follow that invitation, it generally goes pretty well. So, I couldn't really turn down that invitation because, Brent is a brother of mine. This place saved my life. It was like a no-brainer. So that's how I came to be the director of Subconscious Association. Hey everyone, my name is Nic Gregoriades. I'm a 4th degree black belt, and I'm excited to let you know that I've just released my new program on BudoVideos. It is the art of teaching Jiu-Jitsu, a collection of all the things I've learned about teaching Jiu-Jitsu, disseminating the art over a lifetime of traveling the world, teaching seminars, classes, private lessons. If you're wanting to be a Jiu-Jitsu instructor or you already are a Jiu-Jitsu instructor, this is going to help you immensely. Enjoy. First of all, when do we use this choke? Low mount, right? So I slide over, I get to mount, I drop my hips in, he starts panicking, he pushes my hips under. Take the grip, yank this arm back so that I can get all my knuckles in the cuff. And now, this is where it gets fun, right? Sometimes, no matter what you try to do, you cannot find this guy's neck. You can't get your arm across. So Roger actually showed me this. He said he just takes a fist and puts it in his jaw, right? And man, the guy taps real quick then. It's not nice, but hey, you're fighting in a comp, or if the guy's a douchebag, you want to give it to him. But also I found the most common defense that guys use is this hand comes up to stop the hand from going across. And if you've done this properly, you can actually put your hand below. You can actually get and protect your neck. You can get a submission on his hand by pushing his hand into his neck, right? And that only works when you've got this like strong alignment, right? So he's protecting his neck. You just put your fist against his hand and punch it into his neck, and then it becomes a strangle because it's on the artery, not on the windpipe. Interesting thing I learned about strangles is you only need one of the carotids. I always used to think you need both to strangle someone. No, you can strangle on one. That's why if I just do this, like Jake's gonna tap, right? Sorry, buddy, I know it's horrible. You just need to get one artery, and this is the perfect example of that, right? So we've got our Ezekiel. I've come under. I'm ready to go. He's blocking. Cool, I just push it into his, and he taps a lot of the time. And then there's another cool thing, another really nice method of dealing with that hand. If you want to be less of a douchebag and be nicer to him, this is blocked. So what I do is then I lift this elbow high here, and I use my fingers to go over his fingers and slide down and get it in. Right, so one more time. He's blocking. I can't get it across because his hand's blocking. I lift my elbow high. I use my fingers under his fingers, go through, and then remember the guy's little shuffle and apply. That last one was actually pretty crappy because my hand was like that. What's the problem here? No, yeah, the knuckles aren't in. I've got the right alignment, but all the knuckles weren't in. That's what you want. So now we're going to work with those two little bonuses for when the guy defends, right? The first, you do everything you can, but you can't get across, so then you just make a fist and put it right on his hand and jam it. So you want him to push his hand into his neck, right? The second one is elbow high, and then you come down like a dive bomber and you slice your fingers under his fingers, and then drill your hand in, and you just finish as usual. Go. Got it? Okay, let's practice 3. Yeah, what's up, Justin?
Sorry, I have trouble with this one too, kind of with the punch choke as well. Like, if the motion isn't this, if you do go in on the side on his hand, or you just like pushing in that way, or is it like?
That was not straight. It's a good question. It's not this. It's just punch. It's just like punching into his neck.
And you like just kind of leaning in his shoulder straight, like pushing him like that? Or?
Sorry, dude. Yeah, it's just this. Yeah, it's not like a super elegant looking choke, but yeah, it works. Good to go, guys?
When I think of you, one of the things that comes to mind is what a great networker you are, and how whenever you introduce me to one of your friends, they're undoubtedly going to be one of my friends as well.
That's so cool.
You have such a good way of choosing and maintaining friendships. How are you able to develop that skill?
I heard it said once that often we seek out in life what we didn't have when we were young. You know, so like if you're poor when you're young, you become obsessed with becoming rich, right? Or if you're fat, you become obsessed with becoming in shape or whatever it is. And another way I've heard it said is that hippies breed soldiers and soldiers breed hippies, so that every generation, like if a soldier has a kid, he's usually a hippie. If a hippie has a kid, he's usually a soldier. I thought that was interesting. But for me, man, I wasn't the most popular kid, right? Like I had like some challenges at home, and I was a little bit awkward. I just wasn't the most popular kid. And so I had a couple of close friendships when I was young, but not many. I didn't have like a big group of friends. And so to me, when I got older, it was always something I put value on, right? Like my friends, I said to, I think the last time we were in Hawaii, I said with the group, I said, my friends are like my gold, right? That's like treasure to me. So it's just something I put a lot of focus and attention on, right? I really like, you know how it is, whatever you appreciate grows, right? So I appreciate my friends, and I just, because I value them, like then those friendships grow and they expand, and yeah, I guess that's the best way I can answer it.
Switching gears for a moment, you made a name for yourself decades ago, talking about psychedelics and ayahuasca in particular. I know you've had a lot of great experiences, but I heard recently that you had a not so great experience.
Sure.
You want to share anything about that?
Yeah, you said decades ago, and I started to feel really old, and I realized it's actually 1 decade ago.
Okay. Seems longer.
But I appreciate that. Yeah, man. I realized, you know, that path, it was funny enough, this bad experience happened. The reason I can tell you it's exactly 1 decade ago is because this bad experience happened almost exactly a decade after I had my first ayahuasca experience. And I just realized that I'd hit a place where, you know, I for a long time in my life, I was a very black and white thinker, right? Like it's on or it's off, you know, it's left or it's right, or it's good or it's bad. And I realized I was caught in a belief system where I was like, okay, like plant medicine is an effective tool and it's helped you, so you've got to keep doing it. Like go, like that's it. You do plant medicine, you do it all the time, right? And I realized, like, for some people it's a lifelong journey, and for others there's an end point, right? Or there's at least maybe a pausing point. And I realized that I was at a point where it was time to let that stuff go, right? And it was time to now continue my healing and my growth through different avenues. And I'll never speak bad on plant medicine and ayahuasca. It helped me in so many ways. I mean, it's built so many good friendships and led to so many amazing experiences, but it's time for me to take a long, long break from that stuff.
I know you've influenced a lot of people through your writings and podcasts and talks about that. So do you regret any of those, any of your previous statements on psychedelics?
I don't regret my previous statements, but what I will say is I regret my zealotry. Like, I think I was so excited by the potential that these medicines held and how much they had expanded my mind and changed the way I saw the world, that I wanted everyone to share in that. And what I've realized now, in fact, Brent and Brent's friend Ian in Hawaii helped me understand that. We were having a discussion about this topic, and they were saying, like, certain things in life aren't for everyone, right? Like, you know, there's that expression, Jiu-Jitsu for everyone. That's bullshit, bro. Jiu-Jitsu isn't for everyone, right? It's for a lot of people, but it's not for everyone. It's the same way like psychedelics aren't for everyone. It's, you know, so I really hope I didn't influence someone who it really wasn't for to try them. But I suspect that if they weren't for you, you would naturally just not gravitate towards them, and you wouldn't overcome your fear and go do that thing. So long roundabout way of answering the question, but I think you get what I mean. When you're in Mount, there's two basic things two basic vulnerabilities. What are they? That's not a trick question. His neck, like we just saw. His neck and his arms, right? How does he protect his neck? With his hands. How does he protect his arms? By keeping his elbows close to his center. Any movement of his arms away from that center and they become weaker, right? So when you're in mount, you're always running this little combination between attacking neck, arms, neck, arms, neck, arms. And if he defends one, he has to open the other. It's impossible to defend both your neck and your elbows perfectly. Look, I mean, unless you're some genetic freak who's got like super long arms, it's impossible. I haven't seen it done, right? So if I'm here and I'm going for the Ezekiel, and Jake's like, usually the best defense actually is, I'm not actually going to tell it to you now because I want to see if you can pull off the Ezekiel during fighting, but his hands usually come up to protect his neck. And when that happens, if, let's say the Ezekiel fails, then I just slide up into the high mount, right? Because he had to reach high to protect his neck, and now I start attacking his arms, right? And let's say he gets really like defensive here and he pushes his arms down, cool, then I start going for the neck. You just combo 1, 2, 1, 2, and then eventually you catch one, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so now we're gonna take, thank you so much, Jake. Now we're gonna take our new understanding of how to attack from the mount, neck, arms, and we're gonna take our new technique, the Ezekiel, and we're gonna add that into our same drill that we were doing earlier, specific sparring from the mount, right? If you get an Ezekiel today, that's the gold medal. Silver medal is any other finish, and bronze medal is you take the back, yeah? With the guy on the bottom, there's only one medal, and that's gold medal if you escape.
So, Nic, you've been in jiu-jitsu for a long time. I know you're a deep thinker. When you look back, what do you, when I say the phrase, a life well lived, what does that mean to you?
Have you ever seen the film with, what's that guy, Orlando Bloom from Lord of the Rings, Kingdom of Heaven, the Ridley Scott film. So it's kind of similar to Gladiator. It's this big like epic film, historical epic. It's about the Crusades and Jerusalem. And the main character in there, he says, what man is a man who does not make the world a better place? And to me, I think that is at the root of, it's at the root of what I do is I want to make the world a better place. When I leave here, I want people to say, man, the world was better because he was here. And to me, if I've done that, if people say that, then I'll know I lived a good life.
Jiu-jitsu can bring different things to different people. Like all relationships, we all have our ups and downs with the art. Some days we might feel on top of our game when everything is flowing right. On other days, we might feel in a slump after getting caught in 5 submissions in 5 minutes. For Nic, it has brought a purpose, a livelihood, and a network of friends, affiliates, and training partners. In short, as Nic said, jiu-jitsu saved his life. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Rolled Up with Nic. Personally, I learned a lot about the Ezekiel from the mount from Nic. Nic says the Ezekiel is Roger Gracie's highest percentage attack from the mount, so I'd like to ask you, how often do you get Ezekiels from the mount? My percentage wasn't high, mainly because I felt like a brute trying to get my hand across his neck when he defends. Nic showed some good details about just grinding right through their defenses, and so I've been getting them a lot more. If you're an instructor or an aspiring instructor, please check out Nic's new instructional, The Art of Teaching Jiu-Jitsu. I have never seen a better instructional on how to teach. Nic is supremely qualified to teach how to be a teacher, and if you're looking to improve the quality of your classes, I know you'll get a lot out of this instructional. It's available on DVD or streaming on BudoVideos.com.
It was